I want to welcome everybody to the Daily Cheat Sheet. The dude is back. The band is back together. Golan, I want to get right to this. This is a serious story. There was a shooting at an army base today. And for a long time, army bases have been considered soft targets. And people always go with the assumption that things have been like this forever because, well, we're just told to do this. And there have been obviously shootings on bases. We had the Islamic shooting that got covered up, that the great Reed Rubenstein from America First and who works at the White House right now did an amazing video about the Fort Hood shooting. And it was just brilliant work that he did. And a lot of that was being covered up. But why in God's name? It was passed in 1993 by the Pentagon. It was a regulation, and obviously under Bill Clinton. What is going on? This is active military.
I want to explain too, what does it mean when something is a soft target? So it means that basically these are places where violence can occur and there is very little to do in terms of combating that sort of violence. So you would think an army base would be one of the safest places that exists. You would think it would be stacked to the gills with weaponry, with soldiers, with people standing guard, with everybody at peak readiness. Army bases are not what you imagine. They're not what you see in the movies. I've been on many army bases, and some of them look like just little cities. They have 7-Elevens and community centers and everything else because they do have families there. And so it is something that just feels like a little town. And as a result, there's a lot of space. And there's a lot of space that is not actively patrolled. So how, amongst the most armed and trained men and women in the country, how did they become soft targets?
I've also spent a lot of time on military bases, and I'm going to respectfully disagree that they're soft targets. A soft target to me is an amusement park, a movie theater, a place that there are just sheep lined up with no defense. These incidences that we're seeing on these military bases, for the most part, they were military personnel that have committed these crimes. A lot of times they are mentally unstable. Obviously, if you're going to go do a mass shooting, you've got to be mentally unstable. Sometimes there is a lot of Islamic Jihad type motivated. That's what's driving them. Other times it's just some sort of discrepancy, a feud. I mean, if you saw a Full Metal Jacket and you know how hard these drill sergeants can drive people, you can go crazy. I saw guys in my unit just snap and lose it, not shooting anybody, but just mental breakdown. It's usually the biggest, strongest guys that have the biggest mental breakdowns.
Sorry, Mend, I just want to point out, so I want to make sure it's clear. Soft target it's actual terminology. So the reason why they're called soft targets is very specific. It's because the personnel there are unarmed. It's because the access control is inconsistent. It's because they have an over-reliance on perception management. Like there's specific reasons why these things are called soft targets. It's not just because they're easy to attack.
No, and I agree. Every single army base that I've ever been on had access control. You couldn't just get on the base. There's military police on the base, and there's a lot of weapons on the base. So to compare that to, say, a mall, or what we saw in Mumbai with the mall attacks, or in Kenya, the mall attacks, those are absolute soft targets where there's nobody there really to defend the defenseless. In this army case, a lot of the guy pulled out his personal weapon, started firing. He was tackled by guys on the base, and they subdued him.
This was enacted again in 1993. They didn't really give any of the reasons for this. They just sort of said the basic reasoning. Now I'll counter and say our policemen go home with their guns at night.
Can you go into that, Judah? This is what I was talking about. Can you speak to what happened in 1993? What was the policy change?
Well, the policy change was really simple. It wasn't Golan. I mean, you could look this up. It wasn't like this major. It was the Pentagon just put this. They regulated this. Obviously, it was done under Clinton. You could look in deep and find the reasoning, but there really was no reasoning because I can't think of, obviously, when I think about it, I was 17 or 18 years old at that point. I can't think of the scenario that Mend is referring to, that these events actually happened. I mean, I think we'd all know if an army base was shot up by somebody and 30 people were killed, but that hasn't happened. But more occurrences have obviously happened of violence on bases. Now, there are children on these army bases. There are schools. There are so many things and that's why we say soft targets, because once inside, if somebody could get through or somebody there does have a gun, it is considered a soft target. And again, there's always overcorrection, right? It was like, there are certain people on a base that could have that are allowed to have guns. I'm not saying everybody should be holding a rifle all day long, but at the same time, I do think Golan there could be more protections.
Look, I was in the Israeli army. So for me, what you're talking about sounds insane. There isn't a single person that doesn't carry their weapon with them. And when they are, if they are in active duty, you will see people in their everyday street clothes. They have the M16 or the Uzi or what have you slung across their shoulder. Very, very few civilians have weapons. It's not like the proliferation of guns pre-October 7th was a lot less than it was in places like the United States. But every active military had a weapon with them, knew how to use it. They would sit down in restaurants with it. They would be on the bus with it. It was constant. And that way, if anything did happen, those people who were in the midst of training and in the midst of making sure that they knew how to use their gun in an active way were able to use it. And that's why if there was a shooting at a mall, it was almost always quelled very quickly because there was going to be somebody around who had a gun on their hip or a gun slung over their shoulder. So for me, you saying, oh, not everyone should have this thing, I actually disagree. I think if you are trusted enough to be
You're
in the
right.
military and given a
I was
gun.
trying to thread the needle a little bit, go on, which is something I never try to do. But I think you're 100% correct. And men, to your point, this is one of those episodes we probably should have had a general on, but this happened like have somebody like John Spencer come on, but we couldn't get him. So we're stuck with you two who actually served in the military.
You know, in all fairness, some people call me Major Johnson, so I'll step up. But, you know, when it comes to these shootings and what Golan was just alluding to, or actually speaking about, is that if you give licensed weapons to your citizenry, then you will reduce the amount of crimes that are committed by outlaws with weapons. So you look at Israel as a great example. It's a very armed nation, yet you don't have a lot of domestic violence that
Barely any.
includes
Correct.
firearms, right? And when there is a terrorist who comes in because they don't have secure borders with the Judea and Samaria, so you have people coming from the Palestinian Authority controlled zones to commit terror acts, they're neutralized pretty quickly by just ordinary citizens with a weapon. If you outlaw guns, the only people that will have guns are outlaws. I love that line. It is so true. You look at some of the most dangerous cities in the country, they have the most strict gun laws. New York, Chicago. I mean, Chicago, there's like 53 people shot every single weekend in Chicago. They have the strictest gun laws in the country. They don't enforce it. You could shoot somebody and you'll be out on bail, cashless bail, so no bail. You'll be out Monday morning. You could shoot someone on a Saturday, and by Monday, you're back on the streets to shoot more people. That's why Chicago is a failed city.
By the way, have you ever heard my idea about Chicago? What I think they should do
I can't wait.
No, I really think on the weekends when it's all the shooting and especially it happens at night, just invest in lights. Just like make the whole city like Alaska with the midnight sun, make it all lit up over the weekend.
Then they'll just be able to shoot better. They'll just have better aim. I thought you were going to say that we should give Chicago to Canada and let the Canadians deal with it. They're so pacifist and peaceful. I also think that there's a bigger problem is that over the last 4 years, the previous administration was letting every kind of demented idiot into the military, trying to go for this inclusivity thing. And you have a lot of people with mental health issues, identity issues, and they were filled with this idea that they are being attacked by racism everywhere. And I don't know the identity of the shooter in this case. I'm not even making an opinion or a statement about this guy. I'm just saying in general, when you charge the whole nation, you charge people up and saying, you're a victim because there's racism everywhere and you can't see it because it's like air. You can't see it, but it's everywhere. And you need an expert like Ibram X. Kendi to tell you where it is because it's everywhere. It's pervasive. And they use these terms like systemic. There are a lot of people that are buying into that with the victimhood mentality. And I know this firsthand. I dealt with some people that have mental health issues. And when they're in a bad spot, they are looking for a scapegoat. They would love to have somebody to blame it on. And you have a lot of people with mental health issues that are being told by the people in the highest offices, like the vice president and the president, that there's systemic racism everywhere. And that's why your life is shit.
Not this presidency.
Not this president. We're talking about the previous administration told everybody your life is shit because of systemic racism and all this other stuff. And then now you have people acting out. And I don't know if that's the case here, but in general, you're seeing a lot of it.
I want to step back for a second to what Men brought up, because I think it's extremely important, since we've all lived in Israel for a period of time, obviously some longer than others. But having lived through terrorist attacks, or having been through that type of situation, there was nothing more comforting than knowing that every store owner, bar, kiosk, all were carrying, and they were always the ones that took down the terrorists. It was never the soldier.
There was a terrorist attack in Tel Aviv, and the best part is the guy running out of his house with his flip-flops on and just pulled out his handgun and took the guy down. And the guy was a Fortune 500 CEO in these plastic, beach flip-flops. And that is the epitome of how it works in Israel, is everybody who actually knows how to use a gun has one, and now, especially post October 7th, they are more and more allowed to have one.
But go to soft targets. That whole area that got invaded was a soft target.
So this is what I was going to say, though. Hang on. This is what I was going to say, is that I was thinking about what you said, 1993. So 1993, this was peacetime. I mean, this mostly anyway, we're talking about real domestic tranquility. So when you pass a law like this one that says we're going to make these gun-free zones, and I'm assuming it's all the stuff, we want to reduce accidents, we don't want there to be mental health stuff, et cetera, all the internal threats, whatever the reasons were behind it, that's a peacetime policy kind of law. In today's world, where every 5 seconds I'm watching another Muslim stab a guy in Germany, or we have people who crossed over the border and experts say there's a bunch of terrorist cells hiding out in America, or we're watching Islamists march in the streets, or Islamists becoming potentially mayor of New York. This is not a peacetime era anymore. Things like this, we're in a high risk zone. The 1993 policy should be chucked. It doesn't apply to this world.
Food for thought. I think this is something the president, if I were President Trump, this is one of those things I would overturn. This is another, okay, let's take it a step further very quickly. There's something very emasculating for both men and women, in a sense, taking away a soldier's gun on base. And when you look at the timeline of events, this is really the emasculation of men. Obviously, it was going on a little before that, when the feminism movement started go on. But there is nothing worse than emasculating a soldier than taking away his weapon. And I could understand all the other things, but that was just a quick thought on that. That might sound crazy, but just a weird thought.
It's something that I suppose, I can see what you're saying with the integration of what Men was talking about with a lot of the DEI policies within the military, and also the proliferation of women within the military and all of that. I don't necessarily think that there's a connection to the emasculation aspect of it, because the people who are going to have mental health issues and do this, we're going to do this regardless, I think. I think if I had to point at anything, just from a military perspective, from my own military perspective, I would say that most militaries, and I assume the American military, I worked with them quite often when I was in Israel, they're designed for offensive maneuvers, right? Their job is to go in, target something, take care of something. But it is a different skill set to do base defense. So if you have one guy trying to do something, you can try and target that one guy, and you might be able to do that. But it's a different mentality. There are security forces and MPs whose whole job it is to do that. To me, the training of people to be able to handle an internal threat like that may be worth adding to the equation, because right now, one of the things that was talked about in the articles that I read was there were people on the base who didn't know what to do. And that, to me, is where the real emasculation happens.
Well said. And Mendel, I'll move next to you, because I think this is great. Trump just announced a major investment with Apple coming over, and Tim Cook building over here a massive amount of money. And this goes to your point. You've been 100% correct on this throughout with the tariffs and the threat for these companies. So kudos to you. Another victory today for America.
Back in 2016, when Trump was president, he asked Apple to start building phones here in America, and they made some promises. And then when he lost the 2020, they reneged on all those promises. And then when he got back into office, he slapped tariffs on China, including Apple. Apple lobbied as hard as they could to get him to give them a waiver, and he did. And at the time, I was a bit conflicted on it because on the one hand, they made promises in the past that they didn't keep, and he should have punished them for it. But on the other hand, I also understood that the average American is the one buying these phones, and it would hurt the populace, and it would probably turn a lot of people against them. So he granted them a waiver and let them change gears. They gave them some more time to figure it out. Apple's solution was to move production to India, which doesn't help us at all. It doesn't,
Right.
you know,
Like it adhered to the thing they said they were going to do, getting out of China, but it was basically the skirting of what they actually, the intention behind it.
which you're seeing a lot of those Southeast Asian countries benefiting from the US-China rift because people are moving out of China, but they're moving to Vietnam. They're not moving production back to the US. They're moving it to other friendly countries or friendlier countries.
Cheap countries.
Cheap countries, cheap labor. The India thing, although I love India, I think it's a phenomenal country. It's massive. They have achieved incredible things for a nation that big. I mean, there's abject poverty. There's all kinds of hardships that the Indians are enduring and dealing with. Have had a running conflict with Pakistan forever. But when it comes to this and all those, it's funny because Trump's real gripe with India right now is that they're buying Russian oil and they're funding the war. And India's response to that is you're buying minerals from Russia, you're buying fertilizer from Russia. So why select us as the scapegoat when America and Europe, especially Europe, has been buying energy from Russia throughout this war? They've given more money to Russia throughout this war in exchange for oil than they have given to Ukraine to defend against Russia. So they're basically funding both sides of the war, but they're giving more to the Russians. And Trump's just putting it's a pressure tactic on the Russians. He doesn't care if the Indians are buying oil from Russia. What he wants the Indians to do is to come out and say, we're not going to buy oil from Russia. And that puts pressure on Russia to get back to the negotiating table and end that war. And that's really all he wants. Right after the war is over, India could go back to buying it. And I don't know why India's, holding out. It's becoming a little contentious. Somebody over there needs to advise them. Hey, Mr. Modi, with all due respect, come out and make a statement saying that you're going to stop buying the oil. Russia, let Trump do his thing with Russia for a week or two, and then you get back to it. So that's what I think is happening. And I'm really happy that he's putting this pressure on Apple to move production back to the U.S.
Well said. And Golan, to his point, it's very interesting because Trump and Modi in his first term had a very good working relationship. And then obviously, these are things that we don't always discuss, right? We saw the wars that were started under Biden, and we saw the strife that happened under Biden. And people like India, Modi, took advantage of the situation himself. Obviously. Now Trump's back, and I keep on thinking to myself, they're playing this long gamble again because these are executive actions or executive orders that we'll wait for Trump to leave again, and then we'll just revert back to our past policies. And this is the risk and the gamble, and that's why that bomb into Iran was so important. And so with what's going on with India right now, especially with being nuked and their next door neighbors and the wars going on, this is all an after effect of what Trump inherited.
100%. I think, if you think about the past, the relationship that Trump and Modi had it wasn't just positive or friendly. They were like hugging at rallies. They literally held like not warring rallies, complimentary rallies. Remember in 2019 in Houston, they had Howdy Modi, where Trump welcomed. And then in India, they had Namaste Trump. Like it was a love affair going on. And part of it is the tariff stuff and the reaction that India had to the tariffs. Just wait to see what happens next. But the initial 25% tariffs that already started to put pressure on everything, despite the fact that Trump was doing it everywhere. They took it very, very personally. And people accused Modi, and this is one of those things that happens on a regular basis, is you're friendly, something backfires, and now suddenly everyone targets you. You were the one who said he was our friend, and now he's giving us these tariffs. Your friendship didn't help us at all. And then Modi felt the need to overcompensate for that. So I think that's part of what's going on with the relationship there. Suddenly, since then, it's been bullying and pressure and all sorts of strategic misalignments. But okay, you know what? If that's what happened, that's what happened. It benefits America. I know that's not cool, I guess, in some circles to say, but I am not opposed to the idea that Apple is bringing back everything and spreading it out, by the way, to all 50 states. That's how, don't forget, Apple's, I don't know if it's the biggest, I believe it might be the most profitable or the most successful company in the world. But if it's not, it's certainly amongst the top of them. And they're bringing so much to the point where even the glass that goes into the iPhones and the iPads and everything else has always been manufactured internationally. It's all going to be manufactured in-house. All of the construction, they're outsourcing to 21 different states. I mean, this is a really significant thing. And if they can figure out, you're right, Mend, they already make a tremendous amount of profit. It doesn't mean they're going to suddenly be okay with making a lot less of a profit. So they do have to figure out some of the price points and some of the cost effectiveness of it. But this seems like a massive win and just another one to put in the W column for Trump.
Absolutely. It's great. It's great that they're doing it. I hope they, and this is the main thing, is that it's got to be completed. It's got to be built. It's got to be completed before the end of Trump's term.
Yes.
These are all the things that everything that he is implementing must be implemented before the end of his term, means that that facility better be up and running. And I hope he imposes like harsh penalties on them if they don't hit certain milestones. Basically, put tariffs on them until it's built. Let them light a fire under their ass, because otherwise, God forbid, the next election goes sideways and you have a Mendomny or some AOC lunatic or Bernie that hates America get into office. They're going to give them a free pass, and then it all stops. It all goes away. You know, a lot of those battery plants that were promised never came to fruition. They wait. They make these promises. Then they go, oh, it's going to take us a long time to get permits and build and break ground. None of that. You got to work at lightning speed if you don't want to get hit with tariffs.
Listen, I think you're both 100% correct. I want to move on, though, to, we have a lot of evidence, actually, that, and it doesn't matter at this point, Golan, of the lies that are coming out of the Middle East, not the lies coming out of Israel, the lies coming out of the Middle East. And this is how a lie this doesn't start. I'll get to the second lie in a minute. But when you have the Associated Press today, I mean, this is one of the most crazy stories I've ever heard. Israel obviously had the very successful beeper mission where they blew off most of Hezbollah's testicles, and they decided to show and interview 6 people that were injured in this attack and showing them as the victims and right now, just so people understand, Lebanon is trying really hard to work, I know this, with the Trump administration, and they're really trying to get rid of Hezbollah right now. And so just like the photos were horrific, as Gideon Saar brought up, and many people have brought up in front of the United Nations yesterday, where they actually are helping the terrorists. Stories like this are helping Hezbollah, not Lebanon, who's trying to confiscate all the guns. So this is an extremely horrific job done by the Associated Press. And they really, at a certain point, need to lose their credentials. I'm not even sure they're allowed into the White House at this point. But after you make a story like this, you're just garbage.
There's no question. This is a group that has been just one of the premier terrorist asshole groups that's existed for as long as I have memory. Hezbollah is just a genocidal terrorist organization. There's no other way to put it. This is the same group, by the way, that not long ago launched rockets, as they have many, many, many times, into civilian areas in Israel and ended up killing a whole football field or soccer field, for those of you not in Europe, worth of children. And I don't think that's mentioned one time in the article. When I say I don't think, I mean I know. I read the article. It's not in there. They don't mention any of their victims. They don't mention any of their terrorism. They don't mention any of the bombings and the murders and the rapes that they have perpetrated over the years. What they do is they talk about their moms. They talk about the mothers of the Hezbollah terrorists. How do you feel now that your son is missing a ball? How do you feel now that the pinkies don't work anymore because they're left behind thanks to a pager? These things, to show how victimy they are, it is truly breathtaking. The way I put it, when someone texted it to me, and the first words that I wrote back were, the AP has gone to a point where it's not only insane, they have taken off the mask completely. They have revealed themselves. There's no way.
They're putting on a different mask. They're putting on their actual mask.
Exactly.
Which is that of jihad.
It's not sanitizing evil. it is sanctioning evil. It is saying we are aligned with evil. So this is not something that the Associated Press now just fell victim to or made a mistake or someone just let slip this through. This is a reveal that the AP is just another leg of all of these terrorist organizations.
Yeah, well, so
Listen, there was not a single news outlet during World War II that interviewed Eichmann's family to find out what he was dealing with after he sent all those people to the gas chamber and then he was on trial, right? Like the fact that they are doing this, as Golan just said, the mask fell, the mask is off for a major news, used to be a trusted publication to do a puff piece on the terrorist families. Now, I saw the BBC try to do this right away when it came out, but the facts didn't align with their narrative, so they had to shut it down. What they were trying to do at the time was they were trying to make it seem like Israel just blew up every pager inside of Lebanon. So they were asking questions like, how many doctors in Lebanon use pagers? Wow, that is shocking. That, and how many children? And then they wouldn't, say anything in between. They would say, and how many children were injured by the pager attack? And yes, children of Hezbollah terrorists were injured when their
Who were
dad
playing with their dad's pager.
yeah, the dad put the pager down on the table, and the Israelis had to initiate this attack to prevent Hezbollah from further attacking Israel because they declared war on Israel on October 8th. So the kid was playing with the dad's pager. Dad's a terrorist. Kid got blown up. His fingers got blown off. And it's tragic. It's sad. It's his dad's fault. He shouldn't have been a terrorist. And now you're seeing the AP do this where I read some of the comments where people are like, Israel did this? Screw them. And I'm like, okay, another puff piece for a terrorist organization. Good job there, guys. It's unbelievable that they get away with this in 2025.
And the way they frame it, by the way, the way they frame it is it's specifically designed to make people who don't know any better react that way. Look at this poor mother whose son was attacked indiscriminately because thousands of pagers went off and doctors used them too. And who knows who this guy is. And I mean, these are all pure lies for one of the most targeted operations in history.
That's what I was going to say, is that the most amazing thing about this is that the pager attack was one of the most targeted attack in the history of warfare, where every single combatant, every single terrorist had the pager. Not a single doctor. These weren't pagers that were given and sold in stores in Lebanon. These were pagers that were sold specifically to Hezbollah. Israel got into the supply chain. They found out where Hezbollah was buying their pagers. They got them to buy it from them and inserted a little bit of plastic explosives into each one of these pagers that only went to that one customer. This same outfit that they set up to sell these pagers sold many other pagers to lend cover to their operation. Those pagers work fine. There's no plastic explosives in them. They're not bombs. The only ones that were rigged were the ones that were sold to Hezbollah. And for a national, international news outlet to do this piece just shows you how morally bankrupt they are.
Golan, an important part of this story too, this isn't just about Israel. This is about how the AP portrays organizations like ICE and how we've allowed our news organizations in America to make ICE look like terrorists because they wear face coverings. Well, they wear face coverings because they don't want to get doxxed. They don't want their families to be doxxed. They don't want their families to be assaulted. These people have some extremely serious jobs. ICE agencies have been attacked today. ICE agents have, there's this, everybody forgets the chicken and the egg, right? Why did Trump call the Marines into Los Angeles or in the National Guard? It's because ICE agents were under assault. Okay. This had nothing to do. It wasn't like he just said, oh, let's send in the Marines. He did it because these agents were under assault, and the AP and other news organizations are writing puff pieces about not puff pieces, but writing hit pieces against people in ICE and about what ICE stands for. And we have to thank God that ICE exists. We need more ICE agents in America, and what they have to go through is sickening.
I don't frankly even understand how that is a controversial statement. You've got literally This is federal law enforcement. So I just don't understand. Forget whatever their title is, whether it's ICE or otherwise. These people are arguing that it's okay to attack and violently vandalize federal law enforcement. That's not civil disobedience. That's lawlessness. And I believe at last count, the rise in assaults on ICE agents went up 830%. That was the last time I looked. That was according to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. That is not nothing. That's not just a bad headline. It's an alarming trend fueled by all of this rhetoric that we're seeing online. In the same way that we're seeing rhetoric with stuff going on in Gaza, this is just another one where they have decided this is the group, everyone who is indoctrinated, this is the group you must hate, this is the group you must attack. And of course, that at first starts verbally and then it's protests, and it always escalates, especially among these psychopaths, and especially when you throw in a couple of anarchists into the mix and a bunch of susceptible kids who have never been out of their parents' basement and have no direction in life, or are just looking for any purpose at all. And they're told, why don't you throw a rock through the window of that ice field office and set it on fire and see what happens. The fact that these people are comfortable attacking federal law enforcement means that A, something's wrong with them, and B, they need to be taken down. Now, if we add on to it that ICE had to be engaged at the level that it is, because for 4 years we had a gate swung open for everyone to walk into our country, and millions of illegals came in, and we know that a lot of criminals came in and are causing crimes. This is a necessary side effect. So it's almost as if you lit the place on fire and then you want to attack all the firemen because you don't like their outfits.
You know, we've been saying this over and over again, is that there's a disconnect where people on the left don't understand cause and effect. They don't understand that the Arabs turning down, 8 peace offerings to divide up the land with the Palestinians, and they turned it down every single time. Then they attack Israel. This is the effect. They don't understand that having open borders and allowing whatever it is, 10, 20 million illegal people come into the country, a lot of them criminals, some of them not criminals. This is the effect. You're going to have ICE. They don't understand that if you're going to have sanctuary cities where you don't hand over criminals from your prison system, from your jails, people who have actually committed crimes, then you're going to cause ICE agents to just go into your cities and pick people up off the streets. And you're saying, sure, they're tearing families apart. Yes, they are. That is the law. You know who else gets torn apart? If you're a dad in your car with your kids and you're drunk driving, they're going to separate you from your kids. You're going to go to jail and your kids are going to go to foster care.
Great point.
There's no one else to take care of it. That is the law. That is how it's applied to Americans. Why should it be applied differently to illegal aliens? I've noticed something, and it's just worth pointing out. In my very limited view, I've traveled all around the world, but in my very limited view, I think there's only 2 countries that I've seen this happen. And everywhere else, there's a very strong sense of national unity and patriotism, even when they disagree with the opposing side. And let's use Canada as an example. In Canada, sure, Pierre Poilievre, or whatever his name is, the guy who was running as the Conservative Party, just lost to Mark Carney. But all of them came out in defense of a united Canada, right? And the reason that Carney won was partly because Trump was saying you should become part of America, and there was this big national unity rally. If you attack police in Canada, everyone on the political spectrum will come out against you. That's just the way it is. The only 2 places that I've seen this thing where you have the populace and elected officials, especially elected officials, I'm not even talking about just street protesters. I'm talking about people that are elected, come out against their own government, against their own military, against their own police force, is only in America and in Israel. You have these demented, extreme socialist lefties that hate the country and they hate everything it stands for. So when ICE is doing something so mundane, it's so basic as removing people who have no right to be here, these people think that it's within their right. And I'm talking about elected officials within their right to challenge that, not verbally, but like incite violence against that, to actually be violent. There have been Democratic lawmakers that were arrested for obstructing ICE, and that I only see that here. It's a very weird phenomenon.
You know, I want to juxtapose this really quickly with what you both just brought up, and it's really a fascinating thing, the way the media portrays things, right? You know, you look at Strzok and Page, they were jilted lovers who were trying to save democracy with the FBI, how they paint this picture of Biden's DOJ saving democracy. Then you juxtapose that to Trump's DOJ, a threat to democracy. It's like, Golan, you could take every statement they made when we know how bad the FBI has become. Every American, listen, people voted for Trump for economy, border, and safety, right? And I think border and safety could go hand in hand. But the FBI is broken. These organizations are broken, but at the same time, I would never want to criminalize, in a sense, people that work for the FBI unless they're criminals, which many of them are. And it's just amazing how they do these pieces, how it just totally shifts. It just totally shifts. That easy, go on.
Yeah, but I think this goes back to the same thing we've been pointing out in 1,000 different stories. The way propaganda is framed, the way the narrative shapes the information that we get, whether it is when the exact same thing happens, but one fits the narrative and one doesn't. I always go back to that example where I remember days apart, there was a white guy that got into his car and drove into a crowd of black people, and it just dominated the headlines, as it should have, for months. And then a black guy who had written a bunch of stuff on his social media about how much he hated white people got into his car and drove into a crowd of people. And I can't even find that shit on Google, So the idea that they're going to say this is weaponized and this is protecting, or this is this and this is that, the old statement, right? That every accusation is a confession. I see it over and over and over again. And whether it's in America or whether it's in Gaza or whether it has to do with policy or whether it has to do with Trump, I see it constantly because we don't have news anymore. That's why shows like this need to exist.
Golan, I think it's extremely important to point out, because what you're saying right now is 100% correct, and it's a great point. The news media were meant to be the guardrails against this. And yes, I know in the beginning of time, Republicans had their own newspapers, Democrats had their own newspapers, and Walter Cronkite later in life said he was a liberal that swayed the news, and we know he ended the war. But we really thought there were certain points where we got a little bit past it. It's always been slanted to the left, let's be honest. But they were meant to be the safeguards. They're no longer in any way the safeguards, but the perpetrators. They are perpetrating so much evil and disdain and discord in our country that it can't be overstated. And before I forget, I just want to say this to every leftist out there that uses an iPhone, and this anybody that uses an iPhone. Apple CEO Tim Cook gifted President Trump a custom engraved glass piece designed by a former U.S. Marine now working at Apple, set on a 24-karat gold base source from Utah. So for everybody on the left that's using their iPhone and you gave up on your Tesla, give up on your iPhone now. It's time to go Droid mend. And if I were Android, I would actually just cater to the life. If I were Samsung, I'd be like, leftists, we're the phone for you.
Can I just add that Israeli technology plays a major role in key components within the iPhone that make the iPhone possible, specifically
Even
when
worse.
it comes to hardware innovation and cybersecurity. So for all of you Mamdani fans, time for you to get out your flip phones and Blackberries, because it's time.
If it wasn't, you don't even have to bring up the Israel thing. These lefties are complaining about equity and equality nonstop. The factories that make the iPhones in China have nets around them because the people there are so miserable that they throw themselves off the roof of the building to kill themselves, and they had to put up nets to catch them so that they don't. If that
By the
doesn't tell you
way,
everything
after
you
they
need to
catch
know,
them, they go back to work.
of course,
That is true.
I believe it. So you don't even need the Israel angle on it. If you were truly a social justice warrior, you'd be on a Nokia flip phone or something that was created in Sweden or wherever they make those things. Probably all made in China anyway. But you would not be on an iPhone. I love it now that Tim Cook is coming out because Apple's one of the most woke companies.
No pun intended in his case, but go on.
Apple is one of the most woke companies out there. They double down on all the nonsense, but the fact that they're kissing up to Trump and they're gonna capitulate, they're gonna build the phones here in America, which is great for Americans. It's great for us as a nation not to have to rely on Chinese technology. So on so many levels, yet the lefties won't be able to accept it because it's a Trump initiative, and anything that Trump initiates, they automatically just reflexively need to go against.
Well said. And Golan, I want to end this a little soon. So I just want you to quickly tell people about what's been revealed with the photographers photographing the photo shoots that have been set up with the supposed starving kids of Gaza. If you could please do that quickly.
Yeah, so we talked about this for some time yesterday, so I'll make it very quick, which is essentially that
Because
there's
we have
a
photographic evidence. A lot of
yeah, yeah.
photographic evidence has come out.
Well, this is again the German newspaper BILD has basically been doing a massive expose, and it's not just them. There are other German papers that were involved in this. They have photographic evidence, they have metadata evidence, basically all the evidence you need to know that this is 100% true. And what they point out is that there's not a single photojournalist or journalist working in Gaza that is allowed to do anything that Hamas does not approve of, which means that every photo that you see, every starving person, every starving kid, as Men pointed out, it's either from a totally different conflict. Yesterday, Men, you weren't on the show, but we talked about how the photo that I was talking about when you mentioned some of these are Yazidi kids. Turned out that particular one was a Yazidi kid. You know, it didn't even exist in Gaza and it was from a different year. And so the photos are not just taken from other wars. They are literally staged. The cover of Time magazine, where you see a bunch of poor, downtrodden Gazans holding their baskets and looking forlornly at the screen, is oh, here he's got it up. But look, for those of you on video, Mend has ready to go. He didn't know I was going to mention this. It is a manufactured, staged photo. Every photo that you see, there was a great video that just came out where they were talking to the 70-something-year-old Palestinian man, and he's like, and he's super skinny, skin and bones. He says, I'm 75. I used to rely on UNRWA and US aid, and now I'm going to die. And it's and then they didn't know that there's a reverse angle that came out later. And the fattest woman I've ever seen comes over, and I guess she's the first AD on that particular fake shoot. So everything is manufactured. So for those of you moved by the photos of, and forget the cerebral palsy kids, forget the fact that you were lied to about that stuff. I'm talking about all the other photos that exist. Every single one of them is manufactured. Every single one of them is staged. Every single one of them is propaganda. And as I said yesterday, I don't mean they shot 1,000 photos and then found one and they were like, this is the one that looks the worst for Israel or reveals the most starvation. I mean, they literally said, cut, action, break for lunch, take 5, bathroom break. It was a fake shoot, all of them. So you idiots who fell for it, just know that.
The photo that the Time magazine posted was of a whole bunch of people holding pots and pans as if they're there to get food. And the German newspaper that exposed this giant fraud had a panned out version of these photos. So they're showing you the actual scene. And there is no food. This whole thing is just made up. They bring them to a little wooden fence and they say, all right, they give them all pots and pans and they go, all right, put on your most miserable face.
Why would you bring, one second, you bring up a great point. They're not cooking the food there, okay? They're not cooking the food where they're getting it. I'm assuming they're bringing it back to the tent or wherever they live. So even with that, what you just brought up is such a great point. You're bringing your pots and pans. Why not bring, your toilet seats? How...
Do you know what we drop in Somalia? The number one food item to give a starving population is peanut butter. It's the most calorie rich, calorie dense, of course, shelf stabilized peanut butter. I mean, you could bring it
Good
into
night,
any
everybody.
situation. A lot of athletes take peanut butter, especially endurance athletes. These guys, there are videos coming out of Gaza where they're dumping out the aid. They're dumping out the flour. They don't want the flour. They want some of the good stuff. There's tons of videos of them dumping food that they're not interested in. It's not a starving population. And let me just be clear. There are places in northern Gaza where people are hungry, and there are places in southern Gaza where people are obese. So it's not just
you can
one
go
thing.
Online right now. Actually, this is a fun exercise. Go online right now and look for all the Gazan restaurants advertising on Instagram. They are there. They are in Gaza, currently operating. They have 2-for-1 deals. They have
Tons of food.
Stuff that looks like you're going to brunch at in Cirque du Soleil in Vegas.
Balthazar. The other thing to note is that starvation isn't selective. So you can't have one member of a family. I saw this woman with her supposedly starving husband. The guy was all skin and bones. He looked like he was in a bad condition, and obviously he is. She was obese. Her kids are all well fed. Starvation doesn't selectively pick one member of a family to hit. Either you're all starving or none of you are starving. And if it's only one of you, That's a different condition. That's a medical condition. And you're just masquerading as a starving Gazan. So, look, check your sources, do your due diligence.
But man, it's not just checking your sources; it's using common
Well,
sense.
this is can I
It's
just say can I go on a little short rant here about exactly this, Judah?
you have a minute.
1 minute. Okay, 1 minute for me. That's what is that? 7 minutes?
No, no,
Cool.
no.
Here we
That's
go.
1 minute. That's
Okay, all
1 minute.
right. So look, common sense. Listen to Judah. Judah knows what he's talking about. Common sense, because if you have to rely on fake photos and stage hospital scenes and emotional lies and all the photoshopped IV drips and kids posing conveniently placed and all the parents filming their kids eating sand and Photoshop stuff and photos from Syria and Yemen and Sudan and everything else, then maybe just again logic and using your brain for a moment, it brings up the big question. Is it possible that you don't even really have a starving population, just a really well-oiled, weaponized PR machine? Because if you're telling me in the era of smartphones with journalists, quote unquote journalists, everybody's a journalist in Gaza. Remember, we keep getting told that, with them embedded everywhere. The only proof you can give me is a viral image of a kid with cerebral palsy. Sorry, that means you have a manipulation campaign. You have nothing close to the truth.
I just thought about quickly is we always, and great point, great job in getting that under a minute. You see, you can do it, Golan. You can. And I was just thinking to myself, we all refer to us as, people being citizen soldiers. Over there, they're citizen terrorists. I just want to end by saying, normally when we talk about a subject, especially like we brought up in the beginning of the show and we report a news story, obviously everybody's first reaction is to say, like ours or like mine, Men questions it a little bit. And he's quasi right about it not being fully a complete soft target. We don't have all the details on why they made these things. And it's just something to question. And it's okay to question why people on military bases aren't allowed to carry guns. With that being said, we're not experts on the situation. We're like average Joes or average schmoes that hear these stories, and it's heartbreaking. You don't want to see 5 people on a military base shot. You don't want to hear 5 people anywhere shot. So that's what I want to say about that. Welcome back, Mend. We will talk more about Trump and Putin meeting. Obviously, it's breaking news, and it's just hitting. We have no idea about it. So we could save that for a future show, probably tomorrow or the next day. And it's good to have you back, man.
It's good to be back. I missed you guys. There was a couple of days of lots of family activities and things we were doing, but I missed you guys.
I want to thank everybody that's been downloading the show on Apple, Spotify, at the Daily Cheat Sheet. Don't forget those reviews. And don't forget to spread the show. And you can find us now on Rumble at the Daily Cheat Sheet. Thank you, Golan. You can find us on YouTube at the Daily Cheat Sheet. For the people at Rumble, we are going to be uploading past episodes. So we just didn't start with episode 57. And you can find us on Substack at the Daily Cheat Sheet, Instagram at the Daily Cheat Sheet. Okay, you can find us everywhere at the Daily Cheat Sheet other than X, which is at TD Cheat Sheet. And I want to remind people, when you go to follow us on Apple, it's very helpful if you actually subscribe to the show and follow the show. And I won't give you a whole tutorial on how to give us that 5-star, but if you just scroll down, you'll see it. And it's extremely helpful for us. And that's all we'll ever ask of you, is to follow and subscribe and like. And
yeah, like we always talk about, pass it along to your friends. As Men likes to say, steal their phones and just subscribe on their behalf. And also, because it exists, do an auto download thing. That way you don't have to think about it. It shows up in your inbox when it's ready. I'm genuinely getting messages from a lot of people going, did you put it up yet? Did you put it up yet? And I'm saying to them, auto subscribe, auto download. You never have to think about it. It'll just be there when you're ready to watch it.
We're hearing that some of the biggest growth we're getting is from people telling their friends about the show. So keep it up, guys.
Yeah, and it's confusing. I got to be honest. Whoever is having issues, don't feel like an idiot, because a lot of people have issues giving that 5 stars and stuff. So I had to walk my mother through it. So she's one of them. But I've heard a ton of people say they've done it, but it hasn't gone through. We're not being shadow banned. It's just not being fully done correctly.
Technology is a little confusing sometimes these days. My Aunt Stephanie, who has listened to every single episode of our show, I also just produced a movie recently, and she downloaded the movie and texted me. This is exactly the quote. What happened at the end of your movie? I fell asleep halfway through and couldn't figure out how to rewind. It was weird. So thanks, Stephanie. I appreciate your patronage.
And thanks for putting in a little self-promotion that you just produced a movie. Good job there, Slick.
Great
Uh,
movies from Golan. Great
the
movies. We
the
got
the
to do a
not
shout
packing.
out for Dr. Seth. I mean, he also talked about trying to give us a review. I was like, scroll down and you'll see where the 5 stars are. So anyway, if you're looking at
Shout out to everybody, because we are without a doubt one of the most interactive pods there are. We interact with our fans. We interact with everybody.
but exciting news, we're actually going to set up chat on Substack. So if you want to submit requests and engage with us and just chit chat or whatever it is, hop on a Substack, subscribe. We're going to have a chat feature on there where we're going to be able to interact with you guys.
It's great to have the dude back. You look great. You look fantastic. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I want to wish everybody a good morning, afternoon, and night world, wherever you are.